Well, good Monday morning to everyone. Good Memorial Day morning to everyone. It is May 31st today, and we have hit the end of May, and we've hit Memorial Day as well. As you're going about doing your things for this 3-day weekend, because many of you, if not the majority of you, have today off, and you're probably not listening to this today, probably listening to it tomorrow or the next. But as you're going about your day today, please do remember what the day is about and what the day is for. It is honoring those that have died in the service to this country, not just in wartime, but peacetime as well, because there were lots of accidents and deaths in the military, but specifically was about honoring the war dead is what it originally came about to be. But we remember those that have served our country in any capacity that have passed away during that time of service. So we do want to pray a blessing for them and pray for their families for peace on this date. So with that, we are continuing to work our way through the 17th chapter of the book of Acts. We won't quite finish it today. Today is one of those days where I'm getting ready for this devotion. I went back and forth. I labored over deciding whether I was going to finish a chapter or try to cut it off somewhere. It's not really easy to dice this bit of scripture, the rest of the chapter here. It's not really easy to divide that, but I came up with a place to divide it in the middle of a paragraph or at the end of a paragraph, not quite finishing a paragraph. So that's what I did. We're going to go through from verses 22 to 27 in the 17th chapter of Acts. So let's see where Paul is at. Remember, we left him on Mars Hill, or the Acropolis, Areopagus, rather, not Acropolis, Areopagus. He's up there talking to all the philosophers. That's where they had their court. They would do rulings on court type things up there, but it was also where they just would gather to talk and to philosophize and talk about the new things. And remember, the Stoics and the Epicureans accused him of being a babbler, a seed grabber, someone that picks up bits and pieces of things and jams them together. We talked about that yesterday. Oddly enough, a lot of the other people in Athens were doing that. And of course, that might be why the Epicureans and the Stoics certainly weren't that. They had their schools of philosophy, and they stuck to them. But they probably were used to other people doing that. And again, we talked about that yesterday. So with that, setting the stage of where Paul is at, and remembering that he is not with Jewish people. This is an audience of strictly Gentiles, okay? I doubt there are any Jewish people in attendance at all. Verses 22 and 27, chapter 17, the book of Acts. Then Paul stood in front of the Areopagus and said, "Athenians, I see how extremely religious you are in every way. For as I went through this city and looked carefully at the objects of your worship, I found among them an altar with the inscription, 'To an unknown God.' What therefore you worship as unknown, this I proclaim to you, the God who made the world and everything in it, he who is Lord of heaven and earth, does not live in shrines made by human hands, nor is he served by human hands, as though he needed anything, since he himself gives to all mortal lives and breath and all things. From one ancestor he made all nations to inhabit the whole earth, and he allotted the times of their existence and the boundaries of the places where they would live, so that they would search for God and perhaps grope for him and find him, though indeed he is not far from each one of us." Okay, I thought that was an okay place to break. First thing we notice, Paul, it doesn't jump up and start being insulting at all, does he? Now that's one of I always say it's pretty hard to save somebody from to bring someone to God when the first thing you tell them is you're going to hell. And that's probably not the lead in. You can bring that up, but let's not use that for lead in, because that puts them back on their haunches and they become defensive. Paul doesn't do something like that here. Paul comes right out and says, "I see how extremely religious you are in every way." He's complimenting them in their mind's eye, because again, this group of people, they were spending their time thinking and philosophizing and trying to search for truth, if we will. And so he comes right in complimenting them. Now, most of them, but not all, the Epicureans would have been atheists. Most of them would be polytheists. They would have multiple gods, polytheistic. Okay, they would follow multiple gods, gods of all kinds. Thus, why he brings up and of course that's what was upsetting Paul. Remember yesterday, deeply distressed, provoked, angered, aroused to anger because he saw all these statues as idols to all these false gods. That's what upset Paul. So he could have really easily, I'll back up, jumped right into this and went right in hammering, but he didn't. He took a soft sail. He went right in and said, I see how religious you are. And I saw this idol to a statue to an unknown God. Well, I want to tell you about that unknown God. Chance that it may be I happen to know this guy. And so there he leads right into talking about the God who created the heaven and the earth, created everything, created all of us, supplied all of us. The one interesting thing that he does say in here is kind of a dig, I think. He says, he who is Lord of heaven and earth does not live in shrines made by human hands. Now, the thing we have to remember is Mars Hill, the Areopagus, is on one hill. Across the way is another hill, and on that hill sits the Parthenon, the shrine to Athena, the goddess to which Athens is dedicated and named for. And that's what they're looking at while he's saying this. This God does not need shrines. He does not need temples, and yet, of course, we have the temple in Jerusalem. But he's saying that God has left that temple. It's not necessary anymore, even though he's fully Jewish. That's interesting. He does not live in those shrines. He lives in the hearts of all human beings. So he's talking about a God that is omnipotent and all present. He's everywhere, all powerful, omnipresent, omnipotent, all of that. And he talks about that he created everyone, created all of the earth. And whether you want to go with the literal creation story, or you want to go with that there is an evolutionary Eve and Adam, which they have done genetic testing and they've shown that's back. I think the genetic Eve I think is like 100,000 years. Genetic Adam's a little further back if I remember right. I have a book on that. It's been a long time ago since I read it, and it's possible they've changed their dates on that since that book was written, because that book's date myself, probably a good 20 years old now. Holy smokes. Should go find it, see if it's been, look for it, see if there's a new update. But at any rate, either way you're going to believe it. They track it back to all the mitochondrial DNA in all of humanity evolved from one woman who was successful in passing on all the Y chromosomes and all the males in all the world, traced back to one guy. But again, there is a difference in those dates. So one is like 100,000, one's like 150,000 or something. At any rate, whichever way you believe it, that's the way it is. Whether you're going to take a literal scriptural reading or you're going to take a scientific genetic study, they both have the same answer. There's literally one man, one woman, not necessarily together though, to which we all descended from. But backing up and saying, so that we can search for God and perhaps grope for him and find him, though indeed he is not far from each one of us. That's talking about that. Why are these people there talking? Why are they philosophizing? They're searching for truth. They're searching for that one thing that unites it all. And he's saying we search for God. All of us, even the atheists in our hearts, really do want an answer to what's going on in the world and why they are here. And it's really a cheap out saying, well, we just are. That's really a cheap out. And all of us at some point, even those, again, that are very much deny the existence of God, at some point in their life, they had this yearning, this idea to search for this greater being, something more important, this omnipresent, this omnipotent being that we worship as God, that he is God. And so Paul leaves in verse 27 appealing to that universal human experience of reaching and groping and trying to find God. And I think all of us as Christians have definitely felt that. So that's where he's at. He's left us with that. I think the lesson we can learn from this is how he approaches these fellows. Again, if he went in and started doing scripture and verse, wouldn't have had much luck because they didn't know it. They didn't have any faith in it. It's just like if you're trying to convert an atheist, you're not going to convert him by quoting scripture to him because they don't put any merit in it. That's of no import to them at all. So quoting scripture to someone that's a disbeliever is not going to gain you. You're better off showing them the joy that it gives you, showing them how it guides you in life, and let them see that. So it's a little different kind of a witness, okay? All right. Unless you're really versed in the arguments, it's better to just let your life be your witness to that kind of folk, I think, personally. But I could be wrong. But definitely don't jump right in and punch him in the face with whatever you're saying. You need to be like Paul here, which is really interesting because Paul's not necessarily known for his subtleties. But here Paul leads in with a compliment. And he just slides right into it. And tomorrow we'll find out how successful he was or wasn't in his endeavor. So with that, do have a wonderful Memorial Day. Enjoy the weather. It looks like it's going to be a beautiful day. It's a beautiful morning. But again, please, please, please remember it in your prayers and in your hearts and in your minds. And be thankful to those that paid the ultimate price. So that we can have a day like this, so we can have the ability to put a religious bit, a devotion online and not be locked up. Hopefully that'll never come here, hopefully. But anyway, have a blessed one. Be a blessing to someone today. We'll see you tomorrow.